Today's daf is Masechtas Nazir Daf Yud. We are at the second line from the top. The last word on the line is Tashma. So the Gemara is still discussing. The Gemara is trying to be patient. The suffix that Rav Ashi had, if a Nazir, a Tamei, that's in a basic kfaris, and he mekabel himself in Ziris, is there a din that he needs to have taglachas? So is it only on a guy that's a tar and he's a Nazir currently and he becomes Tamei? So you see then that he needs to have that his Metabe is Naziris. Do you say then that he needs to have taglachas? Or do you say that no, even a Tamei that never had Naziris on him, he needs to have, there's a din taglachas on him. Zot Gemara Tashma, I'll bring you a raya. The pasuk says Lagabi and Nazir. It says V'chiyamus meis alav befesa pisayim v'timei roish nizroi. If a mace dies on him, B'minu Parak Vav pasuk Tes and Yud V'chiyamus meis alav befesa pisayim v'timei roish nizroi. If suddenly a mace dies on him and he becomes Tamei Nazir v'gilach roishoi b'yom tarasa b'yom hashvi galchenu v'yom hashvi should bring shtei sorim v'yom hashmini should bring a carbon shtei sorim shnei ben yain al kain. So we darshan from the words V'timei roish nizroi that dafka betar shenitma kasam medaber. The pasuk's talking about a tahar that becomes tamei. Shotan havar asar. It's coming to tell you that it needs to have taglachas on the seventh day, v'avas siparim, and he has to bring a carbon v'tuma on the eighth day. So we learn out from here. Liftar is hanazir bekever. We're coming to pater and nazir as mekabel naziris in the basic forest while he's tamei that he does not have to have hava seir and hava siparim. Havara seir and hava siparim. So this is what the Brisa says. So Zakti Gemara, because why do you need the pasuk? Without a pasuk, I would say maybe it's kal v'chomer. Ma'aloi dvarim kal v'chomer. A man tar nitma. A malach, a regular nazir that becomes tamei. He needs to have avara seir and avara siparim. He has to have taglachas and the carbon in order to become tar. So misha yatam b'tchila, somebody you have a kal v'chomer to a tamei that's a basic kvar, so he's already tamei. Any din that he should have sheni tan havas siparim havas seir. Avar seir avar siparim. So like the Gemara, so that's why I need the pasuk Talmud loyma v'timei roish nizroi, and you learn out from that dafka b'misha haya tahar v'nitma kasam medaber. Pasuk's dafka telling you have to have taglachas and carbon, and somebody that's a tar, another that's tar and becomes tamei sheitan avar seir avar siparim. Uliftar is hanazir bekeven. It's coming specifically the pater a nazir that becomes a nazir in a basic far as well as tamei. So you see clearly that it does not need to have taglachas tama. Shma mina. So the chayr will poishet at Gemara the suffix of Ashi that a tamei that becomes a nazir does not need to have taglachas. Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Gemara man tana hada tana rabbana. Who is this tana going like this that it says in the Brisa? Ein bein tamei shenazar. We had a brisa before that said that the only difference between a tamei that makes an that's kamal naziris in the basic cars to a nazir tar becomes tamei is only the difference is that the shvi shelo is only an minyan. That by a tamei shenazar the seventh day counts for the naziris, and as soon as he hits the seventh day after he becomes tar, he could start counting his days in naziris of Tahira. But the Nazir Tahar Shenitma ain't Shvi Shalai Elim and Minyan. Masha'inkin, a Nazir Tahar that becomes Tamei, the Shvi is not Elim and Minyan, it only starts on the eighth day, and the reason is because he has to bring the Karbanos on the eighth day. Amar of Chizda, so who's this going like this, Brisa? Rabbi, it's Shitas Rabbi, the Amar Rabbi, a Nazir is Tahira Chala, Ela Ad Shmini. Rabbi says that any Nazir Tahar that becomes Tamei, he can't start counting his Yemei Naziris of the Hayro only by the eighth day. To eat Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, if you want to tell me it's Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and not Rabbi, Ha'amar, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that Naziris of the Hayro Mishu the Chayla, that even a Nazir Tahar that becomes Tamei, a regular Nazir, that it starts from the seventh day. Zok the Gemara, my Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Where do you have the Machlekes Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef Yehuda? Where do you find it? So like the Gemara, the Tanya learned in a brisa. It says legabe a nazir that becomes Torah from his tumah. Bamidbar parak vav pasuk yud and yudalv. Uvayoyim hashmini yavi shtei soyim oishnei ben yayoyna v'kidesh esreisha bayoyim. So Rebbe learns bayoyim what's that day? Zok the Gemara, Rebbe holds, but Yom Havas Karbanos. If it's going on the 8th day, the day that he brings Karbanos, that's what Yom Hahu is set on. Divrei Rebbe. However, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that by Yom Hahu is going on B'Yom Tiglachtoi, which is the 7th day, which is the day before he brings his Karbanos. Zok the Gemara Vayter, V'Hada Tnan. So the Gemara now is going to bring a Mishnah and increase the Daf Testament Alf. And the Gemara is going to discuss like which shita is this Mishnah going like? Is it going like Rebbe that says that he could start counting Naziris on the 7th day? I'm sorry, Rebbe holds he has to wait to the 8th day. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says you could already start counting Naziris from the 7th day, the day before he brings Karbanis. So Zok the Gemara want to say, who's this Mishnah going like? So what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says, increases Daf Testament Aleph, Nazir shenitma tumas harba, Nazir that gets tummy a lot of times. Einu maybe ala carbon echad. Allah is like the Mishnah only brings one carbon on all the tumas. So Dr. Gemara Mantana, who's this going like that says you bring one carbon on a lot of tumas? So the question is Maman of Shach. If he got tummy once, this Nazir, right? He was a Nazir Torah, he got tummy. And he got tummy one time. A minute later, he got tummy again. A third time, 3 minutes later. So l'chayra, that's not considered tumas harbe. So it's pasha, that's one tumah. So l'chayra, it's pasha, you bring one carbon on it. And if it's talking about that he only got tummy a second time after he became tar from his first tumah, then l'chayra, it's pasha that it's a second tumah, and it deserves a second carbon. So what's the case talking about? So Mozain, the Gemara is understanding that some sort of middle type of case, that it didn't happen one after another so quickly, the tumas. However, it's also not so separated to a point where it's clear that you have to bring a separate carbon. So what's it talking about? Zok the Gemara, Amar Rav Chizr. Rav Chizr says of Yosef Yehuda, it's going b'shitas Yosef Yehuda. The Amar Naziris Tahira Mishvia Chayla, that the Naziris of Tahira is Chal from the 7th day, and he could start counting Naziris from the 7th day. Umashkachas law. And is that design the Mishnah can be talking about he becomes Tameh on the 7th day. The first time he becomes Tameh the 7th day, right? When he started counting his zeros. The Chazar v'nitma. And then when he has his Yemei Tahira of 7 days, again the next time around on the 7th day he also became Tameh. Umani Rabbi Yosef Yehuda is going according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda came in the Layatza Sharuyu Lahavi Carbon. That although it really seems like two separate karbanas, because two separate tumas, because it really happened on the 7th day of Tahira, and technically he's starting to count another Naziris, but Lamaisa, since he's Layotzel Lasharu Lahavi Carbon, he would only bring the carbon the next day on the 8th day, and he didn't even get to that point because it came Tameh, so the Mamela, Zakta Mishnah, Lashitas Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, Ein Chayiv Ela Carbon Echad. You're still not going to be Chayiv only one carbon. So it's going with Shitas Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, then it makes sense. Like the Gemara, the Item Rebbe, if you want to say it's going with Shitas Rebbe, that he could start counting, he could only start counting the zeros on the 8th day. So the Gemara, the Nitma Yemashvi, if he became Tameh on the 7th day, and then he did Tahir, and again on the 7th day he became Tameh, V'chazor Nitma Yemashvi, Kulu Tumah Richti, it's one long Tumah, because you can't count from the 7th day a new Naziris anyway. You have to wait till the 8th day. So that's pasha that you only bring one carbon. V'ida nitma b'shmini, and if he became tamei on the shmini, v'chazam nitma again, and the second time it happened again, or the third time again, on the 8th day again, hariyatza shashuru lavi carbon. Then in that case, technically he had the ability to bring a carbon on the 8th day. So even if he became tamei on the 8th day, l'chayr it's pashat that it was chalon and mechavis carbon havas carbon for a tumah. So it's as if he becomes Tameh after he already brought his carbon, then Avad in that case he should bring a separate carbon for each Tumah. That would be say like that, like Rebbe. So Zok the Gemara, Mozain Mishnah makes sense according to Shitas Rabbi Yehuda that he could start counting a new Naziris on the 7th day of Tahira. Zok the Gemara Vayta. My time to Rebbe. What's Pshat and Shitas Rebbe that holds he can only start counting a new Naziris on the 8th day? So at Gemara, Amakra, the pasuk says, Legabi in the parsha of Tyrus Nazir. It says in the parsha of Tyrus Nazir that becomes Tamei in middle of his Naziris. A middle of Parak Vav pasuk Yudin Yalf. It says Vayim Ashvi Yavi Shtei Ser Mishnei Ben Yoyna LaKoyin Al Pesach HaMoed. Va'asa HaKoyin Echad Lechatas VeEchad LaOilav Chipar Lo Me'asher Chata Al HaNefesh. So that's what it says in the pasuk, and then it says afterwards the next pasuk Kiddush Roishai by Yoimahu. He starts counting his new Naziris. Kiddush Roishai by Yoimahu. So to avoid in the psukim, the by Yoimahu is going on the day that he's mischaper with his bringing of karbanis, which is the 8th day. That's what Rabbi holds. That's where you learn it out from. So correcting Gemara, Ibn Zoyver, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yehuda, L'chayra. You should learn out from Yoimahu also go on the 8th day. Correcting Gemara, Im Kain. If the kavana of the pasuk is that the Kiddush Rosh is going on the 8th day, let it just say the Kiddush Rosh and finish. You'll know that the 8th day he can only start counting his years on the 8th day. By Yoimahu Lamali, why does the Torah tell us the words by Yoimahu? If it's not coming to darshan for the 8th day, because even if it wouldn't say by Yoimahu, you know that it's going on the 8th day. You just say the Kiddush Rosh is going on the 8th day. So Zakh Rabbi Yehuda Tanei English V. So you say that the words by Yoimahu is coming to tell you that it's going on the 7th day. That you can start counting in the zeros of the higher on the 7th day. So Zakh Rabbi, reflecting more of a Rabbi Nami Yaksib by Yoimahu. L'chayr according to Rabbi also says by Yoimahu. So he should darshan from these words to tell you it's going on the 7th day. Zok the Gemara, Amalach Rebbe, Hahulach Yudas. It's coming for something else. Leimar Lach to tell you, Afal Pish, Lehiv Karbonois, that even though it's the 8th day currently and he did not bring his Karbonois, then he could start counting already in the Naziris of Tahira. But without the pasuk of Bayemahu, I would say that since first it says V'chipar Olav and then it says V'kidesh, so he has to get his kapara of Havas Karbonois, and only then he could start counting Naziris of Tahira. So by Yema, who's telling you that he could start counting even though he did not do his actual bringing of the Karbanos yet. So frek the Gemara now that Rav Chizda my duchgelo ukmei Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. So Gemara is going back now on the Mishnah Krisis Daf test that says we've had before that says Nazir Shenitma Thomas Harbe he only brings one carbon, and the Gemara is that Rav Chizda is that sign over there. It's going like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. It's Chal from Shvi, and that's when the Mishnah is coming and saying on that middle of the road scenario. That's when you say that he only has to bring one carbon, because although he could technically start counting from Shvi, still, if it comes Tamei and he's Chazer v'Nitman and Shvi, he only brings one carbon. It's going with Shitas Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. So, affecting Gemara, Rav Chizda my duchilo ukmei Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Why does the Dafka have to say that Rabbi Yosef Yehuda? Lukma can go in the Nitma, the Chazi v'Leil Shmini. You could even say it's talking about the Shitas Rebbe. And since we just said now, Rebbe holds that as long as it's the day that he's Roy Favaras Karbonos, he could start counting the Tahira. So maybe say it's talking about that it became Tamei on the night of the 8th day, which is the night before the day. And that's what when the Brisa says it's talking about Tumas Harbe. So say it's talking about the 8th night, and that's why he could pater everything up with one carbon, because Lamaisa he's not chayiv to bring a carbon until the next day, the 8th day. So that's why he's pater everything up with one carbon. So Zakh the Gemara, I have a very geshmak case like this. You could say it's talking about even Rebbe. So besides the Gemara's Taina, Rebbe Rav Chizda did not have to say it's only going to be Yehuda, because you have a Yitzuri even like Rebbe. The 8th night. So Zakh the Gemara, but loy mukum like Rebbe, from the fact that you see Rav Chizda did not zetzayin like Rebbe, lema, let's say, because Savar that Rav Chizda holds leil yolav mechosers manhu. So there's a shayla, meaning something that there's a shayla if you say mechosers zman. So laila is mechosers zman. So for instance, it's something that has to be done during the day, like being makrav karbanis, and it's reached the night before that day to bring the carbon. So if you say it's einay mechosers zman, that means that it's as if the time already came to bring that carbon. So Zakti Gemara say Rav Chisda holds Laila is Lam Mechusar Zman, and therefore, even if the Nazir becomes Tameh on the Leil Shmini, which is the night before he has to bring Karbanos technically, he still cannot be Pater with bringing one Karban on both Tumas, because that's considered as if he's Tameh after it already reached time to bring the Karban. It's Laila, and the time to bring Karbanos is the next day. No, you say Laila is Lam Mechusar Zman. But if Rav Chisda would have held that Laila is Mechusar Zman Zakti Gemara, then he could have zet the nine like Rabbi. That's talking about that he became Tameh on the Leil Shmini. So the it's muchach that Rav Chisda holds Laila is Ein Mechusar Zman. Zakti Gemara, Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava. So Rav Ada bar Ahava wants to do matcha and say no, because Haba HaTalya, it's Tali Zeh B'Zeh. You can't be mechalak between the days of counting the Naziris, or days when you could start counting Naziris Tahira, and the Zman of Chiv Carbon. Why? Because Iyamret Leila Mechusar Zman, even if you say that Laila is Mechusar Zman, Eimas Mechzil Carbon, when is he able to bring the carbon? Latzafra, only the next day on the 8th day in the morning. So Zakti Gemara, Bezoin Naziris Name Lechai Latzafra. The Naziris of Tahira also cannot be Chal until the morning, because the Naziris could only be Chal at a time where it's Royal Carbon. So Bezoin, like Rabbi, if he would become Tameh on the 8th night, then it would be considered one long Tumah with the first Tumah, and it's pashut that would be one Tumah Arucha and it would be one carbon, and that's clearly not what the Mishnah is eschava when it says Tumah Sarbe. The iyam, so that's if you say Laila is Mechusar Zman. The iyamr de Leilya ain't Mechusar Zman. And if you want to say that, so Manav Shachan, and if you want to say Laila is ain't Mechusar Zman, and he starts counting, and when the 8th night starts, it's already Zman Karban. So Ibn Nazir Daf Chayla Ma'urtan. The Chayr Nazir Daf is already Chal from the beginning of the 8th night. And since it becomes Tameh after already he's Mechayiv in a carbon, then he can't be then it's Pashat. He can't be Pater everything with one carbon. So the Mishnah wouldn't be talking about that either. So therefore, Zakti Gemara or Rav Chisda Zetzai in the Mishnah when he became. Therefore, Rav Chisda did not Zetzai in the Mishnah when he became Tameh in Leil Shmini, because in Manav Shach it would be Pashat. Either that it's one Tamah Arucha, if you go Laila is Mechusar Zman, or it would be Pashat that it's a separate Tumah, and you can't bring one carbon if you say Laila is Ein Mechusar Zman. So therefore, Rav Chisda that's the Rein, he thought it made sense to say like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Gufa. We learned in a brisa a Nazir that is Nitma B'Shvi. A Nazir that is the case of the Nazir is Tameh and becomes Tahar, and then he becomes Tameh a second time on the 7th day, B'Shvi, B'Chazav and B'Shvi. The halacha is Eini Mevi al Carbon Echad. He only brings one carbon. But if he's Nitva B'Shmini, and then he's Chazav and Nitva B'Shmini again, then he's maybe carbon al Kol Echad Echad. And Maschol Moina Miyad, and you could start counting again right away on the 7th day, like the Shita of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda we had before. Tivir Belezer, that's what Belezer says. Chacham say that even if he becomes Tameh on the Shmini, he still brings carbon echad ala koil achi avichat hasik. It still brings, that's a big chiddush. Even if he becomes Tameh on the Shmini, he could still bring one carbon on all Tumas until he brings his chatas. So until he brings his chatas on the first Tumah, he could bring one carbon on all Tumas. But hevi chatasai, if he already brought his chatas on the first Tumah, and then he becomes Tameh again, the hevi chatasai, and he brings his chatas on the second one, v'nitma, maybe carbon al-kalach v'echad, and he has to bring carbon each one. And so to the Chacham hold, hevi chatasai, but he still did not, like hevi hashamai, did not bring his hashamai, moine, still he counts his aziris of the Tahira from the time that he brings his carbon chatas. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for him to bring his carbon chatas until we want to start counting his aziris of the Tahira. We don't really care about the hasham. Rabbi Shmuel ben Yechon ben Broika. Rabbi Shmuel ben Yechon ben Broika however, says, Kishem shechatasa ikvasai, just like the chatas holds him back from counting a fresh Naziris, a new Naziris, Ken Hashem ma'akvai, Hashem also counts, it's also ma'akav from counting new Naziris. And he cannot count the new Naziris until he brings his chatas and his Hashem. Not like the Chachamim that said that only the chatas is ma'akav. Zakti Gemara, Bishloim Rabbi Lezer, that says that you can start counting Yom HaShvi. Amar Kra, the pasuk says by Midbar Parak Lam, the pasuk Yudin Yidalf, by Yom HaShvi. Sorry, it's actually by Midbar Parak Vav, pasuk Yudin Yidalf. It says by Yom HaShvi Yavish Teisayir Mechiper Alav, the Kiddush Esreisha by Yom HaHu. So we learn out from Yom HaHu. It's extra to tell you that he could start counting Alpha Pishaloi Hevi Karbanaisav, which is on the seventh day, like we had the drasha before. They could start counting from the seventh day. V'Rabbanon hahu afa pishlei hevi hashamai. And pshat on the sheet is Rabbanon that say that he's counts a new Naziris from the time that he brings his carbon chatas, even though he did not bring his asham yet. That's what they learn out from hahu. By Yom HaHu, we're telling you that that's when he could do it. Ela Rabbi Shmuel that says that he could only count a new Naziris after he brings his chatas and his asham. So by Yom HaHu lamali, then what's by Yom HaHu coming to teach me? Amar Allah, Rabbi Shmuel says, by Yom HaHu is coming to tell you, afal pi shaloi hevi oilasai, that he could start counting a new Naziris after he brought his chatas and his asham, even though he did not bring his carbon oila yet. So frekti Gemara v'Rabbanon, what's pshat on the Rabbanon? How did Rabbanon know to darshan that he could start counting the new Naziris even before he brought his asham? Maybe he could only start counting the new Naziris after he brought his asham, but before he brought his oil, like Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishol, Rabbi Yechon ben Broika says. So how does Rabbanon know the darshan different? Zakti Gemara, oil loy boy miyuta. L'shitas Rabbanon, they don't need to have a miyat to tell you that a oil is not ma'akiv, the minion of counting new Naziris. Why? Because Dorim Ba'almahu, a carbon oila, it's a matana, it's not common to kapara. And it's pasha that it's not ma'akiv counting a new Naziris. So therefore, Al Karch, the Rabbanon hold, but Yom HaHu is coming to tell you, to specifically, it's coming to tell you that before he even brings his carbon asham, he could count the new Naziris. That's the Shittas Rabbanon. The Frekti Gemara, my time of the Rabbanon. L'chayra, why should the Rabbanon have to have extra words of Yom HaHu to teach you this? L'chayra, Frekti Gemara, the Kiddush is that it says the Kiddush is Reishai already before it says the words of Yom HaHu, and it says before it says in the Torah to bring a carbon asham. So l'chayra, it's masha from that he starts counting even before he brings his asham. So the Gemara, the Tanya. So Zakti Gemara, Rabbanan Darshan, that the Brisa says, "V'Hizel Hashem is mein Israel, he kept Mishasol Hashem." So Matam on Loimar, why does it say that the Torah speaks about counting his days and his years in between the Hevi Kevis Ben Shnasa, bringing the Asham and the Chatas and the Oila? So Zakti Gemara, Zakti Brisa, if Yishmatzinish Kol Hashem Shabbatara Shehima'ak, when you find Lagabi all the places where there's Chiv to bring Asham in the Torah, it's Ma'akiv the kapara and the Torah, whoever's bringing it. So Yachai al-Afse, Ma'akvoi. I might think even in this case that a Nazir is bringing a Asham, it's Ma'akav him from counting Naziris of the Hira until he brings his Asham. Talmud Loim is a pasuk specifically coming to tell you the Hizir, the Hevi. The Hizir Hashem is Mein Nizroi and the Hevi Kevis Meshanasa to tell you that Afal Pi Shaloi Hevi, even though he did not bring his Asham, Hizir, he could already start counting his days and Naziris. Zakti Mar Shmuel ben Eishol Yechon ben Broika that holds that he has to wait till after he brings the Asham also, the Chatas and the Asham. Zakti Mara Oimer, he's going to dash in the words of the pasuk v'Hizir v'Hevi to tell you Amosai Hizir, when could he start counting Naziris to the Hira? Bisman shekvar shehevi, only after he already brought his carbon Asham and his Chatas.